every beautiful thing our mind creates, there exists the ability to create its opposite. Nightmares are still dreams at their core. Just because they are bad doesn't mean they aren't ours. I saw her out there in the water, bobbing up and down in the waves. She had swam way out beyond the surf to where her feet didn't really touch anymore. You weren't supposed to go out that far, but she looked so confident. It was like she belonged out there. I couldn't bear to whistle her in. I was the only guard on that day, and the water seemed calm, so I watched as she kept swimming. I was mesmerized. No one else was with her, and yet she splashed and flipped and spun around. Her long hair trailed behind her in the water. It formed a sort of swirly globe that would deflate and slide over her shoulders every time she took her head out of the water. The early evening light was dazzling. It was the kind of light that seemed to hit the water and shatter into a million little pieces that bounced around in perpetual motion. They bounced off the water on her skin and hair, too. It looked like she was made of sparkles. It was magical. In that moment, I was suddenly reminded of playing mermaids. Didn't everyone play mermaids when they were a kid? You'd glide through the pool, keeping your legs firmly together for the full effect, and pretend to navigate a vast undersea kingdom. Childhood summers were the happiest time of my life. No worries, a free and full imagination, and friends who were all just a bike ride away. Life is so different now. Making friends as an adult is hard, and no one ever talks about the things they imagine. Why did we ever stop playing mermaids? As I watched the swimmer drift farther out, I was overcome with another emotion. Envy. Why does she get to be a mermaid, twirling around in the water, not caring about anything or anyone else? She's an adult, too. Why isn't she worried about how far she has gone from the shore? Why doesn't she have a flotation device? Why doesn't she care about what the people on the shore might think of her ridiculous behavior? Admittedly, it's just me at this point, but still, I was getting annoyed. So I decided it was time to whistle her back in. She had lived in her own little world for long enough. I brought the whistle to my lips, but stopped short. The water caught my attention. It looked strange. A glassy channel had silently formed between the white-capped waves. It was a rip current. Just then, the swimmer turned toward the shore and saw me standing at my post. She waved, acknowledging that she'd gone out too far and she knew it, and then she started to swim in. But it was no use. She was swimming against the current. You never swim against a rip current. Even when she was able to just touch her feet to the sandy ocean floor, it knocked her right back down. She'd been out there for over an hour, so she was already exhausted. It was clear that without any intervention, this girl would surely drown, and fast. Some mermaid. I thought to myself, I'll get in the boat and paddle out to her. She's not going to be any help once I get to her. I know the procedures should she need CPR. I have all the training to rescue her quickly. But for some reason, my feet wouldn't move. They stayed glued in their spot. I stood and watched, and she knew I was watching. She tried to wave, she tried to call to me for help, but she started to go under. Her head came up less and less as time passed, and within 10 minutes' time, I could only see her hair, floating like a blonde jellyfish. She wasn't moving anymore. Suddenly, my feet became unglued, and I ran out to the boat. I pushed the boat into the water and paddled it out to her, which took no time at all. There she was, bobbing up and down in the water. Her face pale, her eyes wide open, mouth agape. A silent siren. There was seaweed clinging to her hair and wound around her legs. It brushed against a tattoo of a starburst that probably wasn't intended to be nautical, but it was unavoidable now. She really did look like a mermaid. I always thought I might be afraid of a dead body if I ever saw one, or maybe repulsed. After all, humans are supposed to be scared when they see a dead human. It means the danger is near. But I wasn't scared or repulsed. I loved her. Her skin was so pale and cold, and the salt water made it glow. She was a perfect mermaid. And she was all mine. The light was beginning to shift, and the beach was empty, so I put her in the boat and quietly paddled back to shore. I covered her with towels while I dragged my stand back to the middle of the beach and packed up my things for the day. Then I drove my Jeep down onto the sand to pack everything up. It wasn't easy to get her into the trunk, but I managed it. I drove home, then drug her into my ground floor studio apartment. I laid her out on the tile kitchen floor and went to work. It took a long time, and it was harder than I thought. But when I was finished, I drew a bath. I lit every single candle I had and brought them all into the bathroom. The hot, humid air was filled with a strange, cloyingly familiar scent. It was an odd combination of pumpkin spice, Christmas tree, and citronella. It felt like being in a room full of people that I knew very well, but none of them knew each other. I positioned the bit of seaweed in my new, long, blonde hair and wiggled into my tail. The light from the candles created the dancing sparkles on the surface of the bathwater that I had so admired earlier, and I slid into the tub carefully and then closed my eyes. When I opened them, I realized I had done it. I transformed in the bathtub, just like the woman in Splash. Now I was a mermaid. I watched my long blonde hair jellyfish over my shoulders and fan out into the water. Then I raised my tail to watch the light glimmer off its smooth, pale skin. Seaweed still clung to it in places, and the nautical starburst stretched out along the top. A trickle of warm, coppery liquid slid down my face and into the corner of my mouth. The water had begun to turn pink, but that was okay. I could just imagine. It was sunset. I'm Holly.
I'm Leslie.
And we would be dead. Leslie.
Hey, Holly.
Hey, Fiends. We are back.
Yes, we are.
Hooray. We had to take a little pause for the cause last week because life does what it does.
It sure does.
But now we're back.
We're back.
And it's the best.
So good.
Yeah. Before we get started this week, I feel like I need to offer up a warning about this case.
Ooh.
I know, and I rarely do that, but this one is really graphic. We tell a lot of shocking stories, but what happened to the young woman in this one is beyond the pale. We will endeavor to punctuate this retelling, as we always do, with bits of levity here and there to give your psyche a little break, because sometimes you need a break.
Mm-hmm.
But we are in no way trying to downplay the shocking severity of the events that have occurred.
And when Holly says we, she means her, because
you're not.
I don't know. I don't know what's about to happen.
You are going to, because I actually, for the handful of people that tuned in, I did cover this in our very first ever campfire night.
Oh.
It was the one where we had 800 technical difficulties and we were actually sitting outside by a real fire.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Oh, this is the one where I did is that the story from Connecticut that I did?
Mm-hmm.
Was it the Phelps Mansion or
Yes,
something?
that was the one. And it didn't go well at all. We thought, oh, there won't be catastrophic mic problems and a tunnel of smoke that chases us around. But there was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And because it was in campfire format and the campfire format was in its infancy, I didn't really explore the case fully. And in the years since the special first aired, there have been quite a few developments in this case, including both a conviction and a sentencing.
Okay.
Yeah. So
a lot's happened.
A lot has happened. I figured it was time that we give it the full treatment.
Wonderful.
Right. So this week we are talking about a Polish case, the murder of Katarzyna Zowada, which is known in the United States as the Polish skin case.
Ugh.
Yes. And in Poland, it is simply known as Skora, which means leather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't love it.
Okay. All right.
Right. So to get information and give this case the full treatment, I had to go to more than one reliable source. And all of the reliable sources in this case are in Polish, totally in Polish, from Polish newspapers, which means I spent a great deal of time squinting at translations. And they're mostly correct, but clearly there's a little bit of a language barrier salad when you're reading everything translated.
Right. So you don't speak Polish?
Not yet.
Okay.
By the time this podcast is through, I probably will speak mostly Polish.
Wow.
But squinting at a foreign language is not great for the thin skin around my aging eyes.
It's true. She looks terrible.
Probably. It does create wrinkles.
Yeah.
Now, I've tried my best to hide these wrinkles, but one can only wear big sunglasses inside so often before people start asking what's wrong, which I don't like at all.
Yeah.
So I've taken to looking for cures. And as it turns out, a lot of products will claim they work, but they don't.
Oh, man.
I know. They're just heavily scented.
False advertising.
Total false advertising. They're heavily scented poor substitutes for the one tried and true method that really does the trick every time. A generous coating of...
I have such a cold this week.
Just drop it low.
Validation, a hill worth dying on.
I think that might be your best one.
Thank you.
I think you really leaned into the smoky side of it.
Yeah.
And it sounded forlorn and mysterious.
I was so out of breath. Just that simple tune. So out of breath.
You know what? You did a great job, though. That's right. That's the best thing. At best
Validation.
That's right. At best of all, Leslie, our fiends can give us this priceless ingredient, and it's totally free.
But how, Holly?
But how, you must be asking yourself.
I really am. I don't know why my voice is so deep. It wasn't this deep when I walked in here.
I don't know, but I like it.
Oh, man.
Go with it. Well, I will tell you. Simply head on over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and or a friendly review. It really is the only way to move this podcast forward. Ratings and reviews equal attention, attention equals support, and support equals more and better content for you. But if you just cannot wait for more We Would Be Dead in your life, and who can?
I can't.
It's just too exciting. Don't worry, you don't have to.
Wow, how?
But how, you must be asking yourself? Well, you can support us over on Patreon.
That was just me.
And I knew it was coming. And it was funny before you even did it. There, for just a few dollars a month, you will gain access to our entire catalog of 30-minute horror movies, special minisodes, our weekly after show, Host Mortem, which is available in both video and audio formats. Maybe you want to see our faces. Maybe you don't. Both are okay, but a little bit, why don't you want to see our faces? They're great.
Yeah, why don't you want to see this face?
Maybe you're in Target and you're running errands. I get it. We all multitask. Anyway, you'll also get a special gift in the mail from us, giveaways, merch deals, an on-air toast dedicated just to you, and more. Wow. In all honesty, wow is right. Wow is the appropriate response. We are here thanks to our patrons. So come on over and be a part of the We Would Be Dead family.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, fiends.
Let's be a family. And if all of that is a little too much for you, you can simply follow us on social media. We are at Would Be Dead Pod anywhere and everywhere you get your content. You can like our posts, share our posts, like and share our posts.
I like that one a lot.
It's the best option.
Yeah.
You can leave us a comment, post about your favorite episode, let us know when you're listening. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell your friendly neighborhood river witch. What if you don't live on a river? Well, maybe you should move.
Yeah, that's not my problem.
There is a river everywhere if you think hard enough.
Yeah. The river runs through it.
Yeah, you just gotta look.
Mm-hmm.
Where's your river? Fucking find it. What's their name?
Gladys.
Then your friends and Gladys can become fiends and we can all hang out together. Gladys is a sensible river witch.
Yeah, she's great.
Like, she's not too frou-frou about it. She's practical about her river witchery. She probably wears like really big glasses.
Yeah. I'm thinking like, what's the, I'm having a hard time saying it because of my voice right now, but the Natalie Wood's character in Harry Potter.
Natalie Wood?
Right? Wasn't that her?
Who's been dead for a great many.
Yeah, but wasn't that the teacher? No?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, the prophecy teacher in Harry Potter.
Oh, Sybil Trelawney?
Yeah, Trelawney. She reminds, I'm thinking of like a Trelawney look. Who was that?
That was, I think Emma Thompson.
And oh yeah, Emma Thompson. I don't know why I thought
Natalie Wood died on a boat a long time ago.
I know. I don't know.
Because you were like, who died in the water?
I'm just, yeah.
And you were really attuned to that situation?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Good.
It's been a week.
Oh my God, you guys, it really has been a week. If you're a patron, I'm sure we'll discuss it in Postmortem and you can figure out why we had a week off. So there you go. That's reason enough to join our Patreon.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll never know. Anyway, I think that's all I have in the way of announcements for this week. Leslie, do you have anything to add before we begin?
Well, Holly, I told you the other week that I might have something this week, but I don't.
Oh, man.
I don't. Maybe next week.
All right, then. On with the show. We will begin with a story.
Ooh.
A very old story of two sisters. But not just any sisters. These sisters were mermaids.
Wow.
I know. One was strong and fearless, a warrior who carried with her a sword and shield. And the other was slight and delicate, with a head full of dreams. But some just call her Little.
Oh.
The one thing the two had in common, aside from a tail, was their mesmerizing singing voice.
Jealous.
When the two sisters had both reached the age that creates a longing to explore, they decided to leave their family home and cross the Baltic Sea together. They wound along the narrow sea past Sweden and Germany and on towards Poland. When they reached Gdansk, the little one decided to keep traveling on towards Copenhagen. There, she falls immediately in love with a prince she rescued from drowning, and it's all a surrealist hellscape from there on out. Seriously, it's not cute like Ariel. The Little Mermaid is terrifying.
Oh.
I have a whole recap of the original Little Mermaid written out that I cut for time for this show. So maybe I'll add it as a bonus somewhere if you guys want it. But the original story is both awful and terrifying.
It really is, yeah.
I mean, every single turn of that story is just worse.
Yeah.
Anyway, the warrior mermaid decided to explore the Wisła, that's how they pronounce it in Polish, Wisła River. And in doing so, she ended up getting lost.
Oh, no.
I know. Exhausted after a day of swimming in circles and releasing her little sister into a life of nightmares, she decided to stop for a rest on the riverbank. And while she did this, she fell in love with her surroundings and decided to stay. She's a freshwater gal now. No more salt life for her.
I like it.
Yes.
Okay.
Then, according to traditional lore, quote, local fishermen started noticing that something unusual was disturbing the river's calm waters and releasing fish from their nets. Not deliberating much, they decided to catch the damage doer. To their surprise, they saw an unusual woman whose legs were covered in scales, looking just like a fishtail, captured in a trap that they've prepared. She asked them to please release her, and the mermaid's melodious voice made them fall in love with her immediately. They apologized for capturing her and let her swim freely. From that day on, they were often seen gathering on the riverbanks after a hard day of work, listening to the mermaid's soothing songs. So this is a pretty nice arrangement.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting along well. Until one day, a rich traveling merchant found out about the mysterious creature and sneaked to the riverside in the evening. After listening to the mermaid, his greedy heart and soul desired to own her. The merchant's mercenaries put up a trap and captured the mermaid, then locked her up in a nearby hut where they waited for further orders. The mermaid started crying, and her cry was like the sobs of the very earth itself. The people's hearts were bleeding with sadness. A brave fisherman's son couldn't stand the torment brought upon the mermaid and gathered the locals. Together, they defeated the guards and set the mermaid free. "I will never forget what you've done for me," said the mermaid. "I won't sing for you any longer, but whenever your people are met with overwhelming troubles, I will protect you." And so she did. From there on out, the warrior mermaid became the symbol of Warsaw. They call her Syrenka, and there are numerous statues in her honor, one that sits on the banks of the Vistula River, where she sat once to rest. There's only one statue of her little sister in Copenhagen, just saying. So, whatever. Syrenka is on the Warsaw coat of arms to this day, actually. So Warsaw's symbol is a mermaid with a sword and shield.
Okay.
Unencumbered by clothing, holding her sword and shield, and protecting the city. Over the years, Warsaw has continued to embrace the symbol of Syrenka, the warrior mermaid of the deep. But a beautiful woman's torso disturbing the calm waters of the Vistula River is not always a good thing. On January 6, 1999, a pusher tugboat called the Elk was chugging along the Vistula. Now, I've always seen boats named after women, so I like to imagine that the owner of this one was in love with a woman named Elk.
Right.
She's probably pretty sturdy.
Yeah.
This is Elk.
I love it.
Elk will kick your ass if need be. And also, the name of the river is Wisła, but it is spelled Vistula, which is why you will see me like kind of stammer over pronouncing it sometimes. But the Polish is Wisła. So anyway,
much prettier.
It is way prettier than Vistula.
Yeah.
Anyway, sounds like fistula. None of that is good. Anyway, the captain of the Elk, who I only have a last name for, his name was Captain Mishla. He had his sights set on the boat's mooring, which is where the boat will dock for the night. Their towing for the day had come to an end, and the Elk and its crew were ready to call it quits. I imagine that it's a long day on that kind of job.
I would say, yeah.
Suddenly, the propeller jammed, halting the Elk's forward motion. This was not uncommon near the riverbanks, and Captain Mishla assumed that some vegetation or a tree branch or something had gotten stuck in there and stopped the motion. This was a pain in the neck. So, imagine getting a sock or a bobby pin or a length of string sucked up into your vacuum, and it stops the brushes.
Okay.
It's just like that. But the mooring was just a few feet away, and it was time for everyone to go home. So the captain just let the boat drift in the last few feet on the momentum it had gathered and decided to deal with this situation in the morning. The surface of the water was calm. Syrenka was watching over them. The next morning, when the crew boarded the Elk, the captain remembered his unpleasant task. He's like, shit, the propeller doesn't work.
That's worse. That's like when you forget that you need to go get gas in the morning.
Yep.
Like you didn't leave enough time.
Or you didn't put the laundry in the dryer.
Yeah.
And your brain's like, I have clean clothes. They're all wet.
Ugh, it's the worst.
It's terrible. Yep. So it's that kind of moment. So he grumpily calls a few deckhands over and says, come up and help me unblock the propeller. Because this is a tugboat, so it's big. So it has a pretty decent sized propeller. The temperature also at this point in time, so it's January in Poland, which means it is fucking sub-zero. It's very cold. And the water, while in motion, isn't frozen, but it is icy cold. So this is not going to be a fun thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
The men assumed this would certainly be the worst part of their day. And little did they know how right they were. When they opened the trap door leading to the propeller, so what happens is the propeller, there's a little trap door up on the deck that you can open and access it because it's underneath the boat. And then in order to do whatever you have to do, it can raise up out of the water. But they opened the trap door and they could see that the waters were being disturbed. You know, like when you see a mermaid.
Oh.
Yes. Something was definitely there, undulating below the surface.
Mm.
And it looked like it could be a discarded article of clothing.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
Right. Or maybe a piece of a tarp.
Oh, that's a good
Just
one
like
too.
a little tarp.
Yeah.
People use them by the river.
Mhm.
They could have gotten free in the wind or something.
Yeah, probably it, right?
Happens all the time. No. So they raised the propeller to get a better look, and in doing so, they were met with another surprise. A horrible, pungent smell.
Ooh.
The smell of death and rot. Having worked on a boat, these men likely knew that smell rather well. Creatures do die in the sea and in the river, and they float along. It's unpleasant, but it does happen. But this wasn't an animal. It looked like pale-colored leather wrapped in fabric.
Oh.
Yeah. The captain pulled the leather from the propeller, spinning it slightly as it went, and dropped the object onto the deck with a splash. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, and while the captain stood there trying to figure out what it could be, something about it caught his attention. There on the top corner of the mast, away from a larger piece, was a human ear.
Ew.
Yep. Distinctly a human ear, like it was definitely nothing else.
Right.
The ear was pale and delicate, with a single piercing hole in the lobe.
Oh.
So you could see the little dot where it had been pierced. As the crew and captain unfurled the fabric and the leather, the puzzle began to come together. This was not a wayward piece of clothing. It was not a little bit of a tarp. It was skin.
Ew.
A large swath of human skin that had once belonged to a woman. Captain Mishlaw was horrified.
Oh, yeah.
And with good reason.
Mhm,
Anyone would be horrified. Unbeknownst to him, the elk, he thought, must have coasted over this poor woman's body until it tangled into the propeller. Her skin must have slipped off due to its time in the water, because skin slippage on bodies in the water is a thing. It absolutely does happen. And the rest of her would probably have been left behind. So this poor captain feels terrible, and he is horrified, thinking like, oh my God, we did this to this body. Like, we didn't see it and we ran over it. I can't believe I waited until the next day to see it. So he's probably like losing his mind at this point. And so he decides that he's immediately going to call the damn cops.
Good.
Good captain. I feel terrible for this guy.
Yeah.
Why would you ever think that was going to happen? That's a nightmare.
Ugh.
Yeah. And he was hoping that, like, okay, well, maybe the rest of the body won't be hard to find. If we ran over it, it's got to be somewhere right around here and they can find it. And what happened to this poor woman, he thought? Had she thrown herself into the freezing waters of the Vistula to drown? Was she thrown in there by someone else? Was her body discarded there? Because if you jumped into this river, like at that time of year, not wearing clothing, you probably wouldn't live long.
Mm-hmm.
It was so hard to know based on what they had. Everyone was just speculating. But this was not a job for a tugboat captain.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Way out of his pay grade.
Take a back seat.
Yeah, man. Just, you got it. You got the thing.
Yeah.
Wait till the cops come. Take a rest. You did your job for the day. And so he did. And they waited for the police, who arrived pretty fast. Turns out when you tell the police you have a big piece of skin, they come super fast. Yeah. The remains were quickly secured and taken to a forensic pathologist, and investigators began their search for the remainder of this woman. Back in the lab, the forensic pathologist carefully laid out the skin. Now, this person is referred to in the Polish newspapers predominantly as the coroner. I don't think their job is actually what we know to be a coroner.
Okay.
It is more of a forensic anthropologist or like a medical examiner. This person is like a doctor who is getting clues from this body.
Okay.
Not just like the county clerk who is writing down like cause of death, this. So yeah, just so you guys know, because we've talked before about coroners and how they're not what you think, but in Poland they kind of are.
Okay.
From the translations, that's all I got for you. Anyway. After laying out the skin, it became immediately evident that this had not simply slipped off when it was hit by a boat propeller, because that would like pull it apart, right? This skin had been removed carefully and with surgical precision. According to the coroner, it was the skin of a human woman that had been, quote, neatly cut away at the thighs and neck, reaching only as far as the left ear without the face and arms. Her nipples were also absent.
Ooh.
Why is it always the nipples?
Always.
They always cut off the nipples. Okay. There was an oblique seam going from under the right breast to the left shoulder. So that's like a diagonal cut in it. The coroner went on to say that the body had been in the water for approximately 2 to 3 weeks and that the fabric they brought in were pieces of her sweater. So remember they said there was pieces of fabric on it? This was like bits of her sweater. The initial official report reads, quote, human skin from the front of the body without bone tissue with visible navel, because you can see her belly button, and parts of pubic hair. Now, there are pictures of this online. We will not post it because we will get flagged and because we don't need to. If you want to see it, it's easy to find. And it's not as gory as you think. And I was stunned when I looked at it, actually. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway. Now, while it seems like we have gotten through the worst of this discovery, there is actually still more.
Oh, boy.
The coroner went on to say that this skin had been fashioned into a bodysuit, hence the seams, so it was sewn together nicely, and that whomever removed it wanted to wear it.
Oh boy.
Which would be why there were nipple holes.
Man, doesn't he know, like,
Woof.
a nice nipple belt?
I mean, is high-waisted.
Maybe that's where the nipples went onto, like, maybe he has a collection.
A belt.
Of belts, like, for the belt. I mean, I have one.
You do have one. That is true. They're not real nipples, though.
No. Paper mache.
Or whatever John made them out of. Dear, sweet, merciful Serenka, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
So fortunately, 1999 was a point in Polish forensics where DNA testing had just been introduced. And there seemed to be no better case to try it out on than this one. So with those wheels turning in the lab, we'll go back to the police search of the river because DNA tests even now take time. They're not going to immediately that second tell you who it is.
Right.
So while no further parts of the body were immediately found, say on like the elk or on the riverbanks, the police began to comb the icy waters using divers. And after a week of searching, a leg was found near a hydroelectric dam also on the Vistula River. And they also found some more pieces of tissue floating in litter and tree branches along the banks. They also found pieces of clothing, namely pieces of jeans and a flannel shirt with a precise square cut out of it. All of this is very bizarre. With all the pieces they were ever going to have in play now, so spoiler alert, they never find any more, we can look at this investigation as a whole. Authorities were, and possibly are, still looking for the rest of the body, but it is unlikely to ever be recovered. Further testing had revealed that the skin had been removed while the victim was still alive.
No. Ugh.
I know.
Ugh.
That is almost too much to believe is true. It is true, but my brain cannot fashion those thoughts. I cannot. The victim had also been severely beaten and tortured. The coroner found 4 separate puncture wounds, one under each armpit and one on each inner thigh. Well, they only had one thigh, but putting the puzzle together, they assumed this was all symmetrical. And these were made so that the victim would bleed out. Further, judging by the marks found on the leg, she had also been bound to her location with a chain.
Okay. Ugh. This is awful.
Yep. Upon reading this, I was shocked for a number of reasons. And one of them is that, as I mentioned a minute ago, there are photos. And I expected them to be like hellacious, like incredibly gory. You expect to see this skin and have it be like Spirit Halloween level horrifying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not at all. The skin is beautiful, actually. It's in perfect condition in the photo, the one photo we have. There isn't a mark of rot or a blemish in sight. And it's almost too much to believe because not only had this person been through hell, literal actual hell, but they had also been dead for a while and the body had been in the river for 2 to 3 weeks. And I can't wrap my brain around how it could possibly look the way it did. Leslie.
Holly.
You are the only person I could think of who might actually have an answer to this question. And I'm so lucky that you're doing this with me today.
Oh, boy.
So to give us a tiny bit of a mental break after hearing that bombshell of information, maybe you could tell us how this disconnected skin could achieve such perfection and how we maybe can do the same, but without the horrible parts.
Right.
My skin doesn't look anywhere near as good as the skin, and it hasn't been through any of that. So what's the deal? What kind of skincare can we glean from this in our moment of levity?
Sure. Okay. Well, listen, water is like the miracle worker.
And there's a lot of water.
There's a lot of water.
That mermaid looks pretty good too.
Right. So water is what? H2O, and O is oxygen. And we need oxygen in our skin to like be plump and gorgeous all the time.
Okay.
So that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a lot of different types of water that are like, obviously drinking water is hydrating and that helps inside. But on the outside, just like rinsing yourself with water is very cleansing. And then there's different kinds of water that are even more cleansing.
Okay.
So one of the very simple cleansers out there is the micellar water.
Right.
And it's really simple. It features tiny little molecules of oil known as micelles that attract and dissolve dirt, makeup, and other impurities from the skin. And then these soap and chemical-free waters don't require rinsing either. So you can just kind of like apply it almost like you're going to put on a toner. So it cleanses and tones all in one.
Okay.
There's coconut water. So that is really nice. That's just like out of an unripened coconut. It's like the clear water.
Green one.
Mm-hmm. It helps with blood flow to the scalp and encourages or discourages hair loss and breakage while conditioning locks without chemicals or contaminants.
Delightful.
Mm-hmm. It also hydrates without being oily and primes the combination for promoting healthy skin and hair, right?
Good.
Then there is, like regular water, like we're getting closer to like river water, but we're not there yet.
Okay,
so there's
not
like
yet.
Glacier water.
Okay, which would be very pure, I assume.
Very pure. Yeah, it's a natural filtration and it has extreme levels of purity that makes it a coveted ingredient in skincare and cosmetics.
Okay. Well, this river is also very, very cold.
Right. So cold in general, like when I found out what time of year this was, immediately I was like, well, that like is preserving. That it's just preserving everything. And like cryotherapy is great for the skin.
Okay.
That's why, I mean, they tell you after a shower to always hit your body with cold water. You should take showers in cold water. It's just really good for the skin. It doesn't dry it out.
I, on the other hand, like scalding hot water, which is why I look like an old paper bag.
You should always hit your body with cold water afterwards. That helps to close the pores in
I read
your
that
skin.
about your hair, too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
Just
The cold was good then. Yeah.
Yes. So, so she was probably pore-free.
I mean, it looks like that to me.
Yeah. My favorite is rose water.
Ooh.
That is like, it's like, I don't know, just feels like an elixir on the skin. It's like a gentle antiseptic and anti-inflammatory agent. But it soothes and cools irritated skin. I love using it, especially in the summertime. I use it. That is the main thing that I use. I wash my face. I use rose water, Shore Soap's rose water. And,
I love that product, actually.
and then I moisturize afterwards. But the rose water is like a game changer, and it helps balance your pH, and it does soothe. And if I have fairer skin, so in the sun, it does help heal my sunburns all the time. So it keeps me from like peeling, which is great. But it has a lot of vitamins and antioxidants in it. The other thing is, you and I are very lucky. We live near the sea, so seawater is amazing. The salt water has like magnesium in it, which is great for muscle aches and pains. But it can act like a natural face wash, and it tones as well, which is really nice for both your hair and your skin.
Cool.
Which is probably why her pube hair was still on there, just probably fine.
I mean, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just great. But a lot of companies use, especially the Dead Sea
Okay.
water in like different shampoos, conditioners, and facial cleansers, masks, moisturizers, and soaps. It's like huge.
Interesting.
And then there's thermal spring water, which is really nice.
Okay.
So this water is really great at taking care of skin conditions like eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, anything that's like really rashy and irritating. The spring water can really help clean out and like calm down, which is really nice. It has a lot of minerals in it, antioxidants, and it softens and heals and gets rid of the redness. And a lot of people put the spring water into serums, creams, and sprays that are specifically for sensitive skin and for that eczema, psoriasis, or rosacea, so anything like that.
Excellent.
Yeah. So river water is pretty close to the spring water as
okay.
well, and it has a ton of minerals in it, so people can like bathe in it, and it feels really good. Yeah, you can like you can just jump in, wash yourself with it, and it's great.
Make sure it's a good river.
You
Not
just
a
yeah,
river
it's
full
gotta
of stuff.
yeah.
And then you're set.
Yeah, just
They're full of
really
like algae and stuff too. Aren't algae like super good?
algae are great. Yeah, I love spirulina. That's a sea algae. It's
There
my
you go.
favorite.
I know one day you told me so much about spirulina.
I love it. It's great. It's like an all-in-one. It's just for everything. If you ingested it, it can be like your vegetables for the day.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So water is better than I thought. I really thought it would just be breaking everything down, but it didn't. And now we know why.
That's right.
There you go.
And I feel like if you don't have the body attached to it, like you can just keep spritzing that skin.
Well, the thing is, like, this is kind of gross, but like, we have done cases before where bodies have been found in water. They are not in good shape.
Yeah.
Water compromises so much of a body and usually increases decomposition a lot.
Right.
And so I was surprised to see, and maybe because it was not actively living decomposition, like you said, it's not attached to the living part of the body. I was just surprised at how it looked. I was totally stunned that it's just like this totally unblemished, pearly piece of skin.
Yeah. I mean, I just would think that if it didn't have a body breaking down on
Maybe
the
that's
inside
it,
of it, nothing else is. I don't know. I mean, that would be my thought. And it's just reminded me of this Doctor Who episode. I feel like maybe I brought this up. Now I'm remembering this episode a bit.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like I brought this up in the live show. But in the Doctor Who episode, it was like the end of the world, and they went to the end of the world, and this one character with them was she was the last human on Earth.
Ew, I hate that idea.
Not even on Earth, just last human that is surviving. And all she was a piece of skin, like this skin that was just like laid out. And her name was Cassandra.
Oh my God.
It was just so funny because they're like, Cassandra.
Oh my goodness.
She was such a bitch.
Was her skin really nice though?
It was gorgeous. And that's what every half hour they would have to spray her with water to hydrate.
So listen, maybe we just need to be sitting in water all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know, you guys. Anyway, connecting the dots, the police and the coroner determined that this victim had died of blood loss during the grisly process, or, the process of having her skin removed, or, because she also had her organs and limbs removed as well.
Yeah, I'm sure like a mix of all of that.
Yeah, but they determined that during that it was blood loss that ultimately was most likely the culprit. She
passed out during most.
God, I hope so. And she had also mercifully been drugged.
Okay, I was going to ask that, like if they drugged her, because that would be annoying probably if he was trying to get these clean lines, if she was like
fighting. Yeah. I mean, logistically, yes. And God, I just hope she was not aware of anything at all. Because this is some Blumhouse level slow, painful death. Like Hostel didn't even touch how awful this is. Ugh. Like, I can't imagine. In fact, I would venture...
They did this in Buffy.
What the fuck, Buffy? Come on.
Willow had to deal with this.
She had to be skinned alive?
Yeah, there was a demon that took her and he paralyzed her. So she just had to lay there while he like had this really sharp nail and he would just like slice little
That's
pieces of her skin
terrible.
off
And I hate it.
and eat it.
Ew. Oh,
And he would
God.
like say, I feel like he said like really weird, like riddly lines to her. It was, ugh, bleh. It was terrible.
Cool. But I would venture to say that, like, I don't think I've ever in real life heard of anything worse than this. Like, that is probably the worst possible outcome of
Yeah.
anything.
For
Like,
it to be like real life, this is
exactly. And a
awful.
lot of people will always go back to Armin Meiwes, the guy that wanted to
Oh,
eat a
yeah.
dick, and Bernd Brand, his victim, as the worst thing. But Bernd died at his own request. And Armin Meiwes, though brutal, was in his and Bern's own like twisted way, kind of loving in his process. And this is very different.
Yeah.
This is someone who wanted this to be painful and slow.
Ugh.
Yeah. The DNA tests eventually came back with a match. The skin, leg, and buttock, which is the flesh they found in the reeds, it was a part of her butt. They all belonged to a 23-year-old college student named Katarzyna Zowada. Officers were sent to inform her family immediately and to begin uncovering who Katarzyna was and who did this to her. Investigators found Katarzyna's mother, Marta, who she had been living with, and broke the news. All of the news. So they weren't just
Oh,
like, we
no.
found your daughter. They were like, we found your daughter. She's been skinned alive. And this what happened to that. And it was a lot.
Oof.
In a later interview, Marta said, quote, "This paralyzed me. When I found out what he did to my daughter, I thought I would go crazy with pain." Well, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I don't have all the details of them like telling her precisely because, again, translation does not afford me the comfort of like vernacular. But I'm really hoping that that's not how it was. I'm hoping that there was psychological help on hand during this moment and that Marta was studiously tended to afterwards.
Right.
And it wasn't just like, here's this bomb we're dropping, because that's what it looks like in articles. And I'm just
Right.
hoping that it wasn't actually that way. Because
Right, like just a slow reveal.
yeah, or at least like, you have to come with us and we're going to take you to a safe space with like psychologists and, you know, people who can be with you while this is happening, as opposed to like, we're just going to tell you on your doorstep.
Yeah.
Because this information is not easy to process. But in the interviews with Marta that followed, police discovered that she had actually been engaged in her own search for her daughter, though it was not being approached by authorities from the right angle at all. Not a runaway situation, but pretty close. Katarzyna, who went by Kasia, which we'll call her that from here on out. Katarzyna is the Polish form of Catherine or Katarina, and so Kasia would be our equivalent to Kate or Katie. Kasia was a pretty quiet young woman who was wrestling with her own inner turmoil. Kasia was born on June 1st, 1976, to her mother Marta and her father, whose name has been kept out of all documents and articles, but not for any sinister reasons. Kasia had always been Daddy's girl, and the pair loved to do things together, especially explore the outdoors. They like to do like outsidey things.
Love.
It's a fun daddy-daughter thing. In 1996, Kasia and her father had gone out on a hike. Now, I'm guessing this was like not a beginner level hike. It was a more difficult hike because her father tragically fell and suffered a spinal cord injury during this. And though the doctors tried to save him, nothing could be done. And Kasia's father passed away.
Oh.
I know. And this was, I mean, clearly horrible for her, but she did go through a lot of blaming herself for his death because she was there. And her grief and guilt consumed the once happy and social Kasia. After her father's death, Kasia and Marta moved to Nawahuta, an architecturally significant area in in the area of Krakow. Now, this place was built as a pre-planned socialist, realist, utopian society, which
so much
sounds like a science fiction novel, doesn't it? Though it was not socialist at the time they lived there, the structure did still make for a very self-contained and well-run place. And what that means is these socialist societies were designed to kind of be very self-sufficient.
Yeah.
So everything in it was connected through public transportation, and there was everything you needed, was very accessible, and it was meant so that everyone could have access to everything. And it was also very green and beautiful.
I love it.
I kind of love it too. But what I mean by telling you guys this, why I'm telling you this, is that Kasia and Marta had access to everything one might need to survive. They weren't like, miles and miles away from a doctor or a hospital or in a place where the police were not a known entity or they weren't completely without mental health care. We cover a lot of cases where that is the situation. So I just wanted to set things up accurately for everyone. I know, when we were talking about being out in the rural areas in, like Midwestern United States where you couldn't get to anything.
Right.
This is very different. That is
Okay.
not where they are at all. It should also be noted that Marta is a child psychologist. So while Kasia isn't a child at this point, Marta is still, has enough knowledge to know when something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, it will always be more difficult when it is your own child, but she did keep close tabs on Kasia's grief and how she was, or rather wasn't, coping with the loss of her father. Which is why, after the move, Marta got Kasia into therapy. So she is tending to her issues like right away. It was clear to Marta and to Kasia's therapist that she was battling depression. And I think anybody would be at that point in time. That's like a catastrophic event. So Marta got her seeing a psychiatrist and, or a psychologist. I think a psychologist. And she would actually meet up with Kasia at all of her appointments to make sure that she showed up.
Okay.
Not that Kasia was unreliable. She just
Mhm.
really was like, I know this is something that can be hard to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to meet you there. Say hi when you go in. I'll be there when you come out. That's all.
It's just good support.
It was good support.
I'm
And,
sorry, how old was she at this point?
this happened probably shortly after they moved. So she probably would have been 20, 21.
Okay. So, she's still like a child.
Yeah.
you
She's
know.
she's a on
Yeah.
the cusp of it.
Mm-hmm.
So her
More
mom was like,
adult, but-
I'm just going to make sure that you go. Not that
Mhm.
you wouldn't, but like, I just want to check in. That's all. And I think that was smart, actually, because a
Yeah.
lot of people would choose not to go.
Mhm.
So that's just kind of demonstrative of how checked in she really was. But Kasia always came, and she seemed to actually want the help. And by this time, depression was a known entity, known enough for most people to understand that treatment for it did not mean you were crazy.
Mhm.
It just meant that you needed help. So we were over that hill at that point in time. After the move, Kasia also enrolled in, this is another one, Jagiellonian, I believe, University in Krakow, declaring a major in psychology, just like her mom. But her major didn't really stick. Kasia was listless and showed little interest in school or friends. She changed her major to history the following year, and then the year after, she changed it once again to religious studies. And to me, this is just an observation on my part, looks to be like someone who was looking for answers.
Mhm.
If you study psychology, history, and then religion, you kind of want to know why people are the way they are, most
Right.
likely. What exists before us, why we came to be like we are, and what maybe happens after.
Mhm.
Kasia had few friends, but, none that could be really described as close. They all described her as a quiet person who kept to herself. More than one classmate referred to Kasia as a loner. This made finding out who she was a little more difficult for investigators, and some people would even go on to say they felt she was secretive.
Mm.
At this point, I also have to remark on how dedicated to anonymity the Polish press is. They do not give last names ever, only initials.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that weird? Well, for us, it's weird. It's probably better, honestly.
Mhm.
Any surnames that I have been taken from articles written in the United States. They do not exist in the Polish newspapers.
Okay.
So, one friend, a girl referred to only as Anna, remembers giving Kasia a copy of Tom Wolfe's novel The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. And this is a book about Ken Kesey, LSD, and the hippie counterculture movement of the 1960s. The Grateful Dead's music is brought up quite a bit. And Kasia was fascinated by this book and the movement and immediately started listening to the Grateful Dead. She was like, yes, I'm going to be a hippie. I'm going to listen to the Dead. It's all good. Peace, man.
I love it. That's such a perfect book for college.
It is,
Like,
totally.
I read, like, several like that.
Exactly. And she dove into this, like, sci-fi, philosophical history, hippie counterculture
Mhm.
lifestyle. Now, I want you guys to think back to the 90s for a minute if you were a whole person back then. That is not weird because the 60s were huge in the 90s.
Yeah.
They made like quite a big comeback when I was in high school. Tie-dye, Birkenstocks, long hair with the center part, daisy patterns, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Timothy Leary, The Grateful Dead. These things all had prominent places in my memory of that time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Jerry Garcia died and everybody in my high school was like, no! And I'm like, you're 15. Get out of here. You can't have that reaction to that. I'm sorry. because yes, I was in high school at that point in time, and I went to a prominent East Coast boarding school with a whole lot of liberal kids with money and dorm rooms. So believe me when I tell you, this was all over all of their walls.
Right.
So we all also wanted to spend our time in independent record shops.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the lifestyle at that point in time. We wanted to be like the cool teens in Empire Records.
Yeah.
Or the emotionally damaged young adults in High Fidelity.
Right. I couldn't wait to be old enough to be that cool.
There you go. But you remember it.
I sure
You remember
do.
when that kind of like, I guess at the time it was also like I chain smoke outside and then I go in the record store and I rifle through dusty bins and then I go drink coffee.
It's so bad. I still think smoking is sexy, but like,
no.
but gross. Like I didn't want my husband to smoke.
Mm-hmm.
I never smoked. Like, it's gross, but like there's still something so romantic about it sometimes, like in TV shows or movies. So like now that they don't really show that anymore, I like when I watch an old movie, I'm like, yeah, that was hot.
I'm always startled by it. I'm like, oh, people just be smoking like it's nothing.
I know.
What's happening?
You're like, oh yeah, I forgot that was like really cool.
Which like I smoked way back then.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I was that person that would sit and just anywhere and smoke cigarettes. And now that's so foreign to me.
Right. It's also not hot in real life.
No, it's gross.
Just in film.
Yep.
They
just in film.
Because everybody's so sexy in film.
They are. Agreed. 100% agreed. So the point of this is that when I tell you guys that Kasha began spending all of her free time in record shops and record exchanges and like student clubs and stuff, we can all realize together that this was part of the culture at the time.
Yeah.
There are a lot of articles that make it look like she was this like weird rebel for doing that.
Yeah.
And all of my memories of that time look like that. So I don't understand how people thought that was any kind of an outlier.
No. And also, I mean, definitely of that time specifically, but then of that time in your age in college, because I went through that in college.
Right.
Like, I was like, I'm a jam band person, but like never could get through a song.
No, I was never a jam band person.
No, I also was not, but I had them downloaded on LimeWire for sure.
There you go. I went down the punk rock channel of that as opposed to like the hippie music channel.
Well, the punk rock was definitely what I listened to in the concerts I went to, but
there you go.
I was still trying to, kick a hacky sack around.
Right, exactly. And I mean, maybe in Poland it was slightly different because I can't talk about the culture barrier there. But what I can say is that like everyone makes this out to be this weird thing. And it really was very common in my mind.
Right.
It seems very normal to me. Well, I mean, common of the counterculture, I should say. But it was a big counterculture. I think we all also know that like I wasn't very mainstream, so it'd be normal to me. Fine. Christopher McCandless is also a product of the beginning of this era. It was a weird time to be alive. Everybody was very damn the man, save the empire, and it was fine. The other thing that was popular at that time was a little bit of leftover interest in the occult because we're bleeding out the end of the satanic panic right now. So for us, it would be like the craft and stuff like that. But this is something else that some news articles will like really lean into. They'll be like, oh, a lot of youths in Krakow at the time were like into Satan worship and reading about the devil and stuff. I'm like, no, they were probably playing light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Yeah.
This is also something that is not as concerning as a lot of articles will make it out to be. Krakow did apparently have a keen section of the youth counterculture that it is reported have begun giving up their lives to join cults. I cannot find any evidence of this. It is only in like sensational newspaper articles, but it's mentioned several times. I think this is more something that parents were really afraid of, but wasn't really happening.
Okay.
But it should be mentioned that people thought that. Everybody thought that if your kid went missing, they joined a cult.
Right.
That's what they were thinking.
I guess like if they left to like, I don't know. I picture them as just like little communes that at some point somebody might be like, hey, I think I'm slightly in a cult. I'm going to go now.
Yeah. Or this is like the Jenny Jones era where everybody was seeing the worst possible outcome of everything.
Yeah.
So what you would see was like, oh, these two kids joined like a NXIVM level cult, and all kids now must be in cults.
Right.
So I think there was a lot of like sensationalism with that, but you will read it in articles, so it's worth me mentioning it. And they do say that, like, the youths were worshiping the devil. But I feel like this also always happens in cases that involve youths. They always have to throw the devil in there for good measure.
We're so mischievous.
I know. And there is no indication that Kasia was ever interested in the occult or a real cult. But it's there, so I'm going to tell you about it. So, on November 12th, 1998, Kasia had an appointment with her therapist, and her mother was there, diligently waiting to be sure that she checked in. And her appointment was at 6 o'clock. And 6 o'clock came and went, but Kasia never showed up. Now, she had never done this before. She was at every appointment on time. And it had been like a year or so that she was doing this. So Marta immediately began to panic. This was not like her daughter. Her brain went like, oh my God, she's in a cult right away. So after the time of the appointment had come and gone completely, Marta went back home to see if maybe Kasia wasn't feeling well or had just gotten her days mixed up, but she wasn't there either. So cult confirmed in her mind. She was like, which as a parent, you're going to panic. I get it. You're going to think of the worst possible thing right away. So she reached out to a few religious organizations who were known to rescue kids from cults at the time. She's like, you save kids from cults? Where is my kid?
But isn't that just a cult?
No, it was
Saving
like
kids from cults.
It was this specific one is a monastery. So it's like a group of monks, I guess, who would pull them. I mean, maybe. Yeah. Who knows?
It's all a cult to me.
There you go. But the monks, these are good monks because they said, no, what you want is the police, ma'am. You don't want us. What you want to do is to call the police. And they were right. So she called the damn cops. Okay. Good job, monks. Marta made out of...
I mean, some cults are nicer than others.
Yeah, this was a very nice cult.
Sometimes they are.
So Marta filled out a missing persons report, and the cops promptly blew her off, of course, saying that her adult daughter could do whatever she wanted, basically, and probably just went off to do something without telling her, and that she would return shortly. They're like, she's going to be back before long. I know.
But, like, what if she was doing something that she didn't want to do? They need to find her.
Well, they didn't want to think about that. And they were wrong. Weeks began to pass, and the police seemingly did nothing. After learning of Kasia's depression, so they poked around a little bit, they found that she was seeing this therapist for depression. They assumed that she must have taken her own life.
No.
Case closed. They're like, oh, well, she was depressed and you haven't seen her for a few weeks, so she clearly died by suicide. We're done. Yeah. But Marta did not believe that was the case. Yes, her daughter was depressed, but she was also invested in her own treatment and seemed to have interests and goals. Even if they weren't clear ones, she was still looking at life and examining things she might be interested in. And so Marta took matters into her own hands. She spoke to people at the college, so she's like, I'm going to investigate this shit myself.
Good.
Put up missing persons posters and hired a private investigator. Now, I wish I could tell you this resulted in some like watershed information, but it didn't. Up until the point that Kasia was identified as the owner of the skin found in the Vistula River, police showed absolutely no interest in her case whatsoever. And this is particularly haunting when put together with the fact that Kasia was kept alive and likely imprisoned after her disappearance for about a month.
Right. Oh.
You can't help but wonder what could have happened had her disappearance been taken more seriously right away.
Oh, I don't know. We have a couple cases that are like this.
I know.
And like the one that just popped, it's very different, but just popped in my brain was the Cheshire murders.
Yep.
Like where they just waited outside and like,
oh my God, they set up that weird roadblock and then we're just like, well, we're here.
We're here. We'll just wait till everybody's dead.
Yep. I know. It's a nightmare. I can't. Far too many mothers of missing young women will tell you they received very similar treatment. It is an epidemic of dismissal. So now we have caught up to the murder investigation. Now that they had a murder on their hands, and a pretty high-profile, sensational one at that, authorities actually did want to know more about Kasia.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, now they're asking questions. And strangely enough, when they actually looked, they found stuff out.
Oh.
Yeah, what a coincidence.
Look at that.
Like that for the 2 weeks prior to her disappearance, Kasia had completely stopped going to her classes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. She would get dressed in the morning and leave on time, telling her mom she was going to class, goodbye, and return at the time she normally would when classes were over, but she wasn't going to class while she was gone. This is like a very weird John List thing to me, where it's like, oh, you're going to work, but you don't have work, so you just sit there. But she hadn't been like kicked out of school. She just wasn't going. She had also recently begun to alter her appearance. She dyed her dark hair blonde, began a weight loss regimen. And this indicated to investigators that she could have been trying to impress someone or maybe catering to someone's particular desires. Maybe she had a love interest. This seems logical, but
Right.
who was it, right? From what police could gather from store clerks and security footage, Kasia had spent her time walking around downtown Krakow, going to the movies, and looking through records at local record shops. She wasn't doing anything weird or new. She just wasn't going to class. They found out that she had a crush on a boy who did not return her affection. She had a couple interactions with another man who worked at a record exchange. But all of these things just came up as dead ends. Now, this meant it was time to look at the crime from the other end. What kind of person could have done this, right? Who committed this crime? And did any of them live nearby? Because of the violent and sexual nature of the crime, police were afraid that whoever this killer was, they were going to strike again. Well, yeah. So to gain a little more insight, they called in a criminal profiler. So now we're going to get like a profile. After examining the case, the profiler surmised that they were looking for a male in his 20s or 30s with some pretty severe mental issues, which, like, yeah. You're not skinning people alive if you're doing great.
Yeah.
The profiler went on to say that he would be specifically a sadist with psychopathic tendencies. Also, yeah. Okay, we got that. He was likely above average in intelligence and a narcissist. And likely he would have worked as a surgeon, butcher, or veterinarian, or possibly he could be a tailor who had experience hunting and fishing. Which makes sense because your average layman isn't usually able to skin a human or make a bodysuit for that matter.
No.
I couldn't just throw that shit together.
No. I mean, we're pretty crafty.
We are very crafty. They also guessed that this person would have stalked Kasia before making contact and that he chose her on purpose. This had to be a woman whose skin he believed he could wear. So he was also likely to be shorter in stature, probably around 5'6", like Kasia. They also surmised that after choosing her, this person would have formed a relationship with her and gotten her to trust him by pretending to share her interests. So kind of like grooming. They also supposed that this was something called equivalent murder, which would mean that the killing and the torture was basically sex for him. It's sexual in nature, but he doesn't have to have sex with her because the sex part of it, what gets him off is like the killing and the torture. So they thought that he probably didn't have sex with her while she was alive because that wasn't the point. He didn't need to. The killing probably brought on the, anyway.
Okay. Yeah, we're good.
Yep. They also stated that this person would likely be highly impulsive and they were likely to offend again and again until they were caught.
Always offending.
Just so offensive. And then the profile takes a turn that I don't love.
Oh.
Yeah. According to the profiler, this was a rage crime. Agree. But it was not directed specifically at Kasia. The killer likely hated women. Also, I can agree with that. Sure, maybe they did. But then they go on to say that he hated women because he wanted to be one. And then that's followed by a bunch of transgender nonsense that does not align with a single fact they just provided in a profile.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's like now there's like a whole different theory.
And it's not even, all right, let's pump the brakes for just a minute. This case is often compared to that of Ed Gein and to the central crime in the film The Silence of the Lambs. So they compare this person to Buffalo Bill. And while they do have some things in common, I think that in some ways this comparison is missing the mark entirely. So Ed Gein had a lot of issues. I mean, the man had a box of vulvas, for Christ's sake, and a nipple belt.
Right.
But he wasn't a sadist. People tend to not remember that his violence compared to that of other killers alike in infamy was minimal. Most of his art supplies came from people who were already dead. He was a grave robber, first and foremost. In reality, Ed is a lot closer to Anatoly Moskvin, the guy who made dolls out of children whose graves they robbed. Remember that guy?
Yeah, I sure do.
Yeah, that was a lot. What I'm trying to say here, without unintentionally sounding like an Ed Gein stan, is that the end game in today's case is very, very different. I'm not like, Ed was great, you guys. Stop defaming him. No,
He's
that's
really not that bad.
That's not it. He's just a very different animal. He's a very different thing altogether. The end game in this murder is so different, but American headlines love to make them like the exact same thing. They're not. So what do Buffalo Bill, Ed Gein, and this person have in common, you ask? Well, the first is pretty obvious. They all wanted to wear women's skin like a pantsuit.
Yes.
Remember Ed made leggings?
I sure did.
He did. The second reason, however, ew. The second reason, however, is a little muddier. All of these people have been mislabeled as transgender. And this is not a thing trans people do. They don't decide that a good way to affirm their gender is literally putting on the skin of a person who was assigned that gender at birth.
Right.
No, nobody does that. That's not how you transition. That's not a thing. Never at all has it ever been one. This is a dangerous and super transphobic notion. Ed Gein wanted to be his mother.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be a woman. He didn't want to be the woman he really was. He wanted to be his mother. And specifically, he wanted to be so close to his mother that he was inside her skin.
Right.
Huh.
Mama's boy.
Yeah. Buffalo Bill, put the lotion on the skin dude in Silence of the Lambs, was
fictional character.
Fictional, first of all, but also not transgender either.
Yeah.
If you pay even the smallest amount of attention to the film, this is very obvious. Both Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling state in dialogue that he is not trans. And Clarice goes on to remark that there is no link between transgender people and this kind of violence at all, anywhere. Yeah. So why are we still doing this?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's an easily slapped together, lazy narrative, and it's easier to point a finger at something a lot of people don't understand than it is to look for real reasons. So don't do that. Don't be those people. We're not those people. We're better than that. But every article you read is going to refer to the person we eventually tell you who is this murderer as a cross-dresser or a guy that wanted to be a woman. And that's not it. Not at all. Silence of the Lambs actually faced a lot of backlash for what it did to trans people in that way, even though they state multiple times that that's not the issue at all.
It's so frustrating.
It is very frustrating. Thankfully, the cops didn't just start rounding up trans people. They leaned into the skinning portion.
Yeah.
Had this happened before? Strangely, yes, it had. In the same area. What?
Oh.
10 years prior, a man had skinned his wife and son and cut out their eyeballs and threw the whole mess in the Vistula River.
So was it that guy?
No. No, there's lots of them hanging around.
Oh, no.
Yes. And for one reason or another, this dude had done his jail time because, of course, he went to jail, but he had gotten out by the time Kasha was murdered. How he is released, beyond me. That guy should be in jail forever. He skinned his son and wife and took out their eyes. You don't get to come out of jail.
I know.
But he came out in less than 10 years.
It's so different in other countries. Like
exactly.
How they do this.
But this guy is severely physically impaired and wheelchair bound at that point. Like he can barely move.
Mm-hmm.
So physically, he could not have committed Kasha's murder.
Yeah, but see, that's why they let him out. Because why are they paying money to keep him in there?
Fair enough. He's just like...
I'm on board with that sometimes. Yeah. Like sometimes I'm like, it's just the way this person is like bedbound. Just like let them out so I don't have to pay for them to be there.
I don't think we should be paying for a lot of things like that. But anyway. Okay. I guess that's like the only person that could match this skinning situation, right?
I would like to hope.
No, there's another one, of course. 5 months after the discovery of Kasha's body, the Krakow police received a phone call from an old man. They knew he was old on the phone, so he's clearly old.
He just had that.
He was just so old. He told them that there was a body in his basement, and he thought his grandson had put it there.
Oh, boy.
What does this have to do with Kasha? Hang on to your fucking hats. Turns out the old man unknowingly had drastically undersold his predicament. The body he reported in his basement was there. There was a body in his basement, but it was his son. He had been beheaded and the scalp and face had been removed. And the old man had a sneaking suspicion his grandson had done this because he ended up being in the old man's kitchen wearing his father's face and hair and singing and dancing.
Wait, hold on. Okay, who was in the basement?
The man's son.
The man's son. Oh, and his grandson.
Yep.
Okay.
So the man wearing the makeshift Leatherface costume's name is Vladimir. And he was...
perfect.
Not well. As it turned out, Vladimir had killed his father, then cut off his head, took the skin and scalp off his head, and then pulled it over his own head like a mask, then put on his father's clothing to complete the look. And then, originally, the old man, Vlad's grandfather, who didn't have very good vision at this point, thought it was his son in the kitchen.
He did a great job.
He sure did. Then he found a body in his basement and he said, oh man, everything has gone higgledy-piggledy. We must call the cops.
Wow. This is some dysfunctional family shit.
I know. Now, it seems like a pretty strong possible lead. This guy skinning people, wearing it too. So
please tell me this is not the person.
Also not the person.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wait, what town is this?
It's near Krakow. Yeah, it's near there. It's on the Vistula River. This guy is also the right age. He could have been the right size. He clearly knew how to remove skin. He even went to the same college as Kasia.
Oh my God, this is not boding well for socialist societies.
Oh no. But there is no evidence that Vladimir knew Kasia or that he had any dangerous sexual perversions. This is not a sexual crime. His father had walked out on his mother right before this, and Vladimir went nuts with rage. He hated his father and confessed to the whole thing to the cops immediately. He was like, I was real mad. I had to cut off his head and wear it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there's a reason.
But that is pretty personal, honestly.
Yeah.
And typically a person who does something that sensational for personal reasons is not going to offend again.
Right. So they just let him go.
No. They didn't let him go. But there was no evidence of Kasia anywhere in his life or his home. So they were like, we're just going to deal with the one crime.
Right.
So he was prosecuted for his father's murder and convicted. And after serving 5 years in Poland, he was extradited to Russia to serve the rest of his time, which was his home country. So,
how long did he have to serve for?
I don't know.
The other guy only got 10 years.
I don't know about this dude. Russia could have said, no time, goodbye.
Yeah.
Because once you're in Russia, like Poland can't get you anymore.
Right. They're like, you're good. As long as don't do it here.
It was just your dad. That's fine. Whatever.
In Russia, we hug our fathers. We don't wear our fathers.
No. You will learn this lesson. Yeah. You can only learn it once. Yeah. You only get once to learn that lesson. And I guess he did. So what now? Well, nothing for like a long ass time. In 2000, the DNA process had advanced a little bit, and upon re-examination of Kasia's body, they did find another profile on her remains. Her remains had been in the water for weeks. They still found somebody else's DNA on it.
Yeah, it's a great preserver.
They had tried to wear her, so that's not super surprising. But they couldn't match it to anyone. And so for 12 years, the case kind of sat stagnant.
I just got sick to my stomach.
I know. There were theories thrown around, but none that yielded any results. So the case had technically gone cold, but it was just too terrifying for police to ever totally give up on it. In 2012, Kasia's case was formally reopened because technology had advanced. And the way they state this is that the X-Files came in to take over. Now, in Poland, the X-Files is like a cold case unit. Yeah. But here, it is clearly like a paranormal TV show.
Scully.
I know. So when I read this article, I'm like, oh boy, some sexy aliens came in to find out what's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't aliens.
No, but they were involved with aliens.
They were.
So I'm just saying.
Holly, do you believe that there are sexy aliens out there?
I believe that if there are aliens, they better fucking be sexy. Otherwise, I'm out.
Yeah.
I can't. So now that there is new technology and the X-Files have come to take over, Kasia's body, or what they had of it, was exhumed and probably still in perfect condition, if anything is to be gathered from that. And forensic scientists performed a 3D body scan on what they had of her. Now, this showed them the exact nature of her injuries. While we knew that Kasia had been tortured and beaten, this scan uncovered that many of the injuries she sustained were very similar and specific. And that not only that, but they could be attributed to a person who practiced a specific form of martial arts. They won't tell you which kind. It's just like one discipline of martial arts that gives you the same kind of bruises. I don't know. So I didn't dive into that. They also found fragments of vegetation in her skin that were not from the Vistula River or its surrounding banks, which gave them a second location. Because the plant matter found on Kasia was only found in certain parts of Krakow, and it was not the part that had her university in it. So she went somewhere else, clearly. For 5 more years, the police pored over this new evidence. looking for the disgusting Cinderella that would fit the glass slipper of evidence they had made. Then, a break in the case came. A woman called the Krakow police to report a man she found suspicious. Specifically suspicious regarding Kasia. This man had served in the military, during which time he worked in a morgue. He also worked in a laboratory that dealt with animal testing, where his job involved skinning rodents.
There you go.
One day, his superiors came into work and found that all the animals in the facility were dead. This person was the only one there.
I don't know what happened.
That's what they said. They're like, what the hell happened? And he was like, I couldn't say. They were like, cool, you're fucking fired.
Right.
Obviously. But he never explained what or how he did it. The woman who called the police, or I think she wrote in a letter with this anonymous tip also, or it wasn't anonymous. It's unclear. In some reports, it says a call, and in others, it says a letter.
Okay.
So I'm not 100% sure how she did it, but she did. She also said that this person seemed to be obsessed with Kasia's case. She said he talked about it and pored over it and visited her grave almost daily for years. It was almost daily for a while, and then it like tapered off to just like sometimes. He also lived near the spot on the Vistula River where Kasia was found and had been seen on the riverbanks catching and expertly skinning and gutting fish. This man was 52-year-old Robert Janchevsky, an eccentric local whom all the neighbors like to call a freak. That doesn't really cover it. Robert spent his not employed days working out, practicing martial arts, and endlessly walking around downtown Krakow. Occasionally, he also went to the movies.
Well, that's nice.
Check, 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 check. Yeah.
Oh my God.
He had a few relationships, but the women to whom he had been attached did not have anything good to say about him. Shock, surprise. Apparently, he was very demanding and misogynistic. He told them they needed to be educated, but also subservient to him. And they must always wear French underwear. Yeah. This didn't really fly with the women for that long, and they were like, no, thank you, goodbye. And just like in the case of Rebecca Gould, Robert had been on the police's radar since Kasia's remains were discovered. He's in their original reports. They just never unraveled his past.
Oh.
Neighbors had told police to look into Robert right away. They were like, this guy is fucking strange, and he's going to the cemetery. You gotta look into him. He had been weird to women. He was a nuisance and a stalker in the past. And police went as far in 2000, like right after the crime had been committed, to search his apartment. But they didn't find anything at the time. When they left, his mother later reported that Robert acted very strange. He was screaming and yelling and rolling around on the floor, insisting that he had not murdered Kasia, but his friends at the gym set him up.
Oh my gosh.
What? The mother was like, this is weird. Keep going.
And do you want meatloaf, honey?
Exactly. Surprise, surprise. The friends at the gym did not do anything. Also, he didn't really have any friends at the gym. He had some acquaintances. After Kasia's murder, Robert's friends and acquaintances said that he was very changed. He became obsessed with religion and went to church services daily. He also visited Kasia's grave at Batwicki Cemetery. Kasia's mother said she noticed a candle on her grave that would always be there, one that she did not put there, and that once it burnt out, it would be replaced. Police installed surveillance cameras and recorded Robert visiting the grave every night after sunset for years. Sometimes he would bring flowers. They did this years ago, and they never brought this guy in. Like, what? Okay.
What the fuck?
Robert also had a strange and troubled upbringing as well. His birth parents surrendered him to be raised by his aunt at birth. Then at 2 years old, the aunt died, and he was given to his paternal grandparents. His grandfather abused him viciously, but Robert remained with them until he was 11 when his parents finally decided to take him back. His mother showed absolutely no interest in him. She was like, I don't need this child. I'm going to take him to church all of the time so that he's like very, Christian and well, that's where the Christian values come in. But she also had migraines, and so she angrily needed to keep the house dark and quiet at all times. So you can imagine how constantly enraged she would be with an 11-year-old suddenly there. His father was and is a poet, and he focuses a lot on his career. I've read several interviews with this man, and he seems to lament the fact that his son is being accused of a crime he didn't commit, and this is happening to ruin his reputation as an artist.
Okay, so his dad's a narcissist too.
Yeah. One of the interviews I read, his dad meets the interviewer at a cafe, and like a cafe that he frequents all the time, and has people coming up to him being like, sign my book. Oh, what are you doing here, you famous, wonderful man? I'm like, okay, cool.
We get it. You gotta get your validation somewhere.
Exactly. You gotta do it. In school, Robert was referred to as aggressive and unpleasant.
Oh.
It's a real winning combo.
Yeah.
So sometime after he moved in with his parents, the dates are hazy on his background, and I don't need to check them all because fuck that guy. His father had an affair, and his parents got divorced. His father moved out of their family home, got remarried, and had another child with his new wife. And his mother moved to Canada, lived there for a few years. And in this time, Robert lived by himself. And he saw his father every once in a while, but his father clearly didn't want to just take care of him by himself. Or not take care of him, like be with him.
Yeah.
He visited his mother in Canada a couple times, but he didn't want to live with her because at his home in Krakow with his dad, he could do whatever he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Then his mother came back for good in the spring of 1998, which is 6 months before Kasia's murder. And I think I might have said that he lived separately from his father. He didn't. When he lived in Krakow, he was always with a parent.
Okay.
He lived with a parent until his arrest. He never lived on his own. Also, fun fact.
Yeah.
Huh. So how did he know Kasia? Well, remember all those nice long walks he endlessly took, and so did she, in town during the day when she wasn't going to class and he wasn't working or killing animals? And the trips to the movies they both took? Turns out that their paths had intertwined at some point, and they met. And police could verify that they were seen together, but Robert ardently denied that he knew her at all. They're like, here you are on a security camera. He's like, I don't know that woman. Cool. But then in another search of his home that was carried out after, they had this report, it became evident that he did know Kasia.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew her pretty well because he wrote about her in his diary that they found.
Yay, we have a diary.
Dear diary, today I killed a woman. The diary was a detailed account of all the women Robert had stalked, including Kasia, and it also described her murder. The details of this diary entry have not been made public because it was ruled classified by the prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they are much more private in Poland than we are with our news. At this point, once the conviction happens, everybody in the United States would be reading that shit. Police were able to piece together Kasia's last days with all the evidence they had found. So here's what seems to have happened. Robert met Kasia in downtown Krakow on one of their long walks, and he love-bombed the shit out of her relentlessly. So he had been stalking her for a while before he actually met her formally, so he knew what she liked. So he was like, oh my God, I also like the Grateful Dead and this record store. Let's go there together and talk about it. Oh my God, I also like to go to the movies. Let's go to all the movies you like together.
Oof.
Right. So
Is he cute? Are they cute? What do they look like?
You can look him up, or I'll show you afterwards. I would say he is not cute. Not in my opinion, at least. So after some time of this love bombing, he was also lavishing her with compliments, of course. That's how you do it. He also suggested that, you're pretty, but you would be prettier if you were blonde, because he preferred blondes. And, you're really attractive, but if you lost some weight, that would really make you the total package. So she started losing weight. Some people also suspect that maybe he wanted her to lose weight quickly so her skin would be looser.
Ugh.
Which is a really gross thought.
Ugh.
Yep. But she complied either way because they said she dyed her hair blonde and she was trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
And he had a very specific type, so that fits. On the morning she disappeared, it seemed that Kasia agreed with him to go to a cottage on the outskirts of the city of Krakow. The two of them left on a bus heading in the direction of Wolbram, which is a city north of Krakow. And this was confirmed by, and you're going to be really mad when I tell you this, a witness who had reported seeing Kasia board this bus shortly after her initial disappearance was reported, way back in November of 1998. She was like, someone came in after it was reported. The police put it out there and mom put it out there and said, I saw her get on a bus. And they were like, no, you didn't.
I'm so mad.
She did. She did see her get on a bus. She got on this bus. The cottage was located on a small plot of land that was devoted to people's weekend homes where they would garden. This is kind of like a foreign concept to me, but apparently this is a little like country home section where people would go to like for peaceful weekends, and they would have pretty gardens. But these houses, because it's kind of like a getaway home, again, we don't have anything equivalent to this in the United States, so I can't fully describe it. But like it was totally barren on weekdays because you would go there in the summer and on weekends. And this is the winter on a weekday because the day she went missing was a Wednesday. So it is likely that nobody was gardening in November in Krakow. And so it was desolate out there. And whatever he was doing to her, nobody would hear. And nobody would have seen them enter the cottage either.
Ugh.
Right. So police go, this cottage, I guess, was owned by Robert's family. So they were like, oh, he has this cottage. All the dots connect. So they go out to the cottage, they search it, and they find Kasia's DNA in the bathroom. So she was clearly there.
Oh, man.
So he brought her there, chained her up. That's where she was tortured for an unspecified length of time and then killed, and her skin was removed. And they surmised that he also tried it on, but it didn't fit.
Oh,
because Robert is broad-shouldered and stocky. Like he works out all the time and does martial arts. He's the kind of guy that's like wider than he is tall. I don't understand.
He's like a meatball.
Yeah. I don't understand how he thought that this girl's skin was going to fit him. So then we don't know exactly why he got rid of this skin. They think he kept it for a couple weeks and then discarded it in the river, like brought it back home and put it in the river. So my thought is like, I think he got rid of it because he couldn't use it the way he intended on using it. But police are like, oh, maybe it smelled bad. Maybe he thought people were getting suspicious. Maybe I think he just like couldn't use it for its intended purpose. And that's why he discarded it.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yep. So
you'd think he'd like take measurements.
You'd think. But this also to me goes, oh my God, the way you see yourself is so off. If you thought this was going to work.
I know, yeah.
Your self-image is insane.
Right.
So Robert Denshevsky was arrested in October of 2017. And he was arrested super publicly, too. It was like broadcasted on the news, and they did it in front of his apartment building with a crowd around. It was wild. They made a spectacle of arresting this guy.
Because they were like, look how good we are.
Well, yeah, because
we could have arrested him 12 years ago, but we arrested him now.
Exactly.
Look how great we are.
The case was very public, so they made a big show of arresting him.
We did it. We figured it out, guys.
Finally. After some woman wrote us a letter.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was charged with aggravated murder with particular cruelty. Now, in our previous coverage of this case, and in most coverage of this case, it ends right there. I say, okay, he's awaiting sentencing. It was going to happen in 2019 or 2020, which is true, and then COVID.
Yeah.
However, on January 19th, 2023, so this just happened, Robert was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Thank God.
Wow.
He and his father still maintain that he is innocent.
Wow.
I don't know how they're maintaining that, but there are letters he wrote to his father from jail talking about how innocent he is. They are a hard read. I don't recommend them. Kasia has finally been permanently laid to rest, but her spirit can live on forever like Syrenka, watching over the river and the people she loves from above.
Oh, what a nice way to end it.
Thank you. So she's like a beautiful mermaid living on forever now.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't love it.
But yeah. So that's that.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that story. It's so funny to me.
I did it so briefly. I did not have any of those details in there.
That is so
I was like, skin was found in a river.
And I was like, gross.
The end.
Next.
Yeah, I definitely told this in like 7 or 8 pages. And it's not, I mean, like there's clearly so much more to the story than that. But it's a crazy story. The way I found it was like we were doing those campfires and I thought, well, we're going to do stories that are not, because it's involved. But to be fair to my past self, American coverage of it is not involved.
Yeah.
Every American article is like a page long. They're very short.
Yeah.
So I thought, this is like outrageous. It's one of the craziest, most bizarre cases I have ever come across. And it's quick, which is why I did it for Campfire Stories.
Right.
And then when I came back to it this week, I was like, oh boy.
There's so much more.
There is a lot more to it.
Wow.
But also, at the time, there hadn't been a conviction.
Right.
people were still like, we don't know if he did it or not. It was a very like, this is an unsolved case.
Yeah.
So now it's like,
for the police, but everybody else was like, it's this guy.
It's very clearly this guy. It was this guy years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know how. All his neighbors were like, I need you to look into this man. He is terrifying.
We'll get around to it.
They were like, I don't like her body. The rest of her body isn't on his door in the form of a wreath, so we can't prove anything. Goodbye.
I mean, he's at least just like putting candles out for her every night.
And flowers.
Yeah, why should we stop that?
Every night. They had surveillance, and you saw this guy go into her grave every night. And you didn't think, maybe I'll ask her parents, like, who's this one? Do you know him? Because they would have been like, no.
No.
Or just her mother, sorry. I don't know him. Who is this person? Maybe go ask him some questions.
So crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did look up the picture of them. So in all the photos, though, he's like kind of blurred.
No, I have.
You can
I
send
have
me them?
straight up.
I mean, I
photos of
kind
him.
of got a picture of him though, but she is cute.
Mm-hmm. There
I
is
was
another
just mostly. I
her.
just was having a hard time, like picturing him because he is so strange.
He is.
So I'd be interested. I would be interested to find out how he comes off when he's just, I guess maybe if he's just being normal at a certain point, and then maybe he gets like weirder. Like if, I don't know, like.
Yeah, it is hard to
He doesn't seem, it's just hard to have somebody become like interested in him because of, I don't know.
No, and if you look at these pictures of him
in a kooky guy, they were like, he's just kind of, he's nice, he's harmless, he's a kooky guy.
If you look at this, I mean, I'll pull him up for a postmortem and you can give people your reaction to some of the pictures because he's so little.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not saying like looks are a thing. It's actually more for me, it's like the mannerism. So I'm trying to like picture what he looks like with his, and like the description of like what he does. I don't know. It's just hard.
I know.
But I mean, I guess I've like.
Then you think like, okay, well, he does look like a lot of douchey other white guys.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and I'm also seeing, I mean, it's not that long ago, but.
No.
He's a bit older.
The sensing pictures just happened.
Yeah. But I just mean like from when he met Kasha.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Here's his little fucking rat face.
I guess I'm just more like, what did she see in him other than, I guess, like you said, he was love bombing her in a sense.
Yeah, well, he took the time to figure out the things that he could say to her that would make her like him right away.
Right.
And she's someone who had just had like an unrequited love situation where the guy she had a crush on didn't like her back.
She was still trying to like find things. She was sad, lonely.
And she probably had some daddy issues going on because her dad died. And, you know, there's a lot there. But anyway.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, that is that. So toast?
Toast.
Well, to Kasha and her mother Marta for like being on that case and not letting cops say that her daughter just killed herself and walk away from it.
Yeah.
So cheers to them. And
to all of the neighbors.
Yeah, to all the goddamn neighbors who knew it.
Yeah.
And fucking the poor tugboat captain. I was
just gonna say, yeah.
Oh,
the elk captain.
All the people on the elk.
And to whoever the elk might be.
I want the elk to be a woman that's out there like, I am the elk.
Yeah.
They name boats after me, for I am so very solid.
Sturdy.
I am
buoyant.
I am a sturdy woman. Yes, I hold things up. I will never not think that when I think of it. Oh, it makes me happy. And if we had been taken home by any men at the record exchange, we would be dead.
Thank you for listening to the We Would Be Dead podcast. Hit subscribe now to never miss an episode. Rate and review our show on iTunes. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Would Be Dead Pod. And join our Facebook group to discuss the podcast and more.
You're not skinning people alive if you're doing great.
Yeah.